Hi everyone, my name is Lori, and in our last pre-recorded video of the Continuous Quality Improvement or CQI workshop, we'll be talking about lessons learned. To recap, the CQI process is broken down into four main steps: forming a CQI team, identifying an area for improvement, the plan, do, study, act cycle, and today we'll focus on lessons learned, including tips to promote sustainability and how to make your projects stick for continued improvement. Before we get into the lessons learned, as a brief review, the last workshop covered the plan, do, study, act cycle and how to scale your initiative by starting small, learning from your data, and deciding whether to adopt, abandon, or adapt and expand your initiative in scale until the strategy successfully results in the improvement you hope to see and you're ready to implement your change on a larger or broader scale. Once you've gotten to this place of improvement where you feel you're ready to implement your change strategy in the long term, we now want to focus on how we can sustain that improvement. So here are a few tips to consider to promote continuous improvement. The first is to implement a data routine. You want to consider integrating data into daily program tasks to understand how your initiative or program is working. One way to do this is to examine the data used to measure your program goals, and to do this regularly and identify areas that have improved or areas that have declined or are in need of improvement. This could be data around performance indicators, performance targets, or other metrics your program collects to track progress. The next tip to consider is creating a performance board. A performance board is a group of individuals who monitor results of your change strategy and are open to feedback from members, including staff, caregivers, or community members, to better understand how the change strategy is being implemented and how you can improve. This can also be the group who helps keep your changes implemented over the long term. The next tip is to foster a culture of improvement in your program, or this idea of shifting your organization's or program's thinking towards how things can be improved constantly. And there are a couple of different ways to do this. The first strategy we'll highlight for fostering a culture of improvement is research-oriented thinking, which is when you can identify when something is not as efficient as it could be and come up with ways to improve. And this could be as simple as asking a participant of your program what they did or didn't like about your program or a certain aspect of your program. Next, we have new thinking, which is being enthusiastic about and encouraging everyone working in the program to come up with new ideas or thoughts about how the program is operating and how it can improve. Next, there is a mindset of change, which is this idea that we should work on improving operations even if things are working just well enough. And finally, there's the time to discuss and listen for improvements, meaning you should consider creating a dedicated time and safe place for your team to ask questions and try new things. We have two more tips to consider for continuous improvement, and the next one is to define your success. As a program, you want to define your shared vision of what quality and success looks like for your program, and you also want to keep this vision inclusive of feedback that you receive from program participants and staff, and to also consider community needs and funder expectations when defining your success. And the last tip is, don't be afraid to get messy. It's okay and even encouraged to take risks when developing a CQI project. You won't know if something works unless you try it, and it's okay if they don't pan out as you'd hope, and you'll still probably learn something from that initiative and probably identify even more effective strategies to drive the change you want to see. Before we move on, one last piece to consider for continuous improvement is this notion of a plateau. Let's take the figure on the left. In this example, a plateau can happen when you've implemented your change strategy and met your goal and continue to implement your change strategy as planned. However, there might be some instances where if we were to continue implementing that initial strategy, we might miss out on additional improvements that could be made to achieve a higher goal. Instead, when we have reached a plateau and a change strategy seems to be working well, we might consider whether we should increase the intensity of the change strategy and set a higher goal or implement an additional change strategy to reach a new goal or your initial goal, as shown in the graphic on the right. So again, this idea of shifting our thinking towards how we can improve constantly and not being afraid to try bolder or even uncertain strategies and see how it supports you in reaching your goal. So now we want to talk about sustainability, or how are we going to make this new change stick? From the small scale cycles, follow-ups, and adaptations to implementation of the change into a long-term strategy. How will you continue doing the work in the new and improved way? Or if everyone in your agency left their job tomorrow, how would this project be maintained? The first set of strategies to help make your project stick are around testing the processes and procedures that will support sustainability. You want to identify what changes to your processes or policies need to occur. You want to document any changes and make it clear to your team what is changing and how it impacts your team. You'll want to provide staff with sufficient training on this new strategy. And you'll want to track and monitor the results over time and potentially identify future adaptations to your strategy as you identify new improvement strategies. The other important aspect for sustainability of projects is around how you can increase readiness for change by addressing potential resistance to implementation. Sometimes change to the status quo can be difficult to embrace, and the overarching theme on how to support this process is really through communication with your team. Some ways to do this are to communicate by building on the why. Communicate, why is this change happening? You'll want to communicate how will the change impact staff and practice? What resources or supports will you need? Should any adaptations be made before the change is implemented? And finally, you may want to link this change to your organization's aims and mission and embrace this change as the new standard practice. In doing so, over time, your team and organization will embrace the strategy as the new status quo or the way things are, which will ultimately have a positive impact on the change you hope to see. And with that, this concludes our final video of the Continuous Quality Improvement or CQI workshop. You now have all of the pieces of the CQI puzzle you need to complete your own CQI projects. We hope this series has been helpful as you develop your CQI projects, and we can't wait to see all of your great work.